Let's hop right into it. We're going to talk about Mr. Vampire today. Hell yes, this is an absolutely classic 1985 Hong Kong horror comedy. It is a Gene Shaw film, which is a hopping vampire. So Chinese hopping vampires are like a kind of like a traditional creature in Chinese mythology folklore that are they're undead creatures that hop around. It's really cool. And there's like a whole subgenre, of these films. This film was directed by Ricky Lau, and it was written by Barry Wong, Zeto Chukon, and Wong Ying. What I want to talk about is a scene in this film that I think is really, really well done. And what I think it does so well is it, because this film is a period piece. If you don't know what the movie is about, it takes place in China, historical China, not in Hong Kong. And you have a Taoist priest who's played by Lam Ching Ying, who you'll see in the screenshots here is like a legend of Hong Kong cinema. And he has a couple disciples. One is played by Chin Sui Ho, I believe. The other one is played by Ricky Hui, who's in the screenshots here, who you also see. Moon Lee is in the film, who you'll see in the screenshots here. He's got a great cast. And so the Taoist priest is asked to move a grave for like feng shui reasons, right? And in this process, they accidentally create a vampire, and then the vampire creates another vampire, and so they've got this kind of vampire spree going on, and they have to use their Taoism to stop the vampires essentially, and to save the people who live in this area. So what I think is so brilliant about this scene is that you have a movie that takes place in China as a period piece, right? And its audience is people in Hong Kong in the 1980s, people who live in this big, bustling, modern city filled with technology and advertising and neon lights and nightlife and all this stuff, right? So how do you relate to your audience when that's your audience and you're making like a mainland China period piece film? And this scene, I think, does an amazing job of speaking directly to an audience who has nothing like the first-hand experience of the characters in this film. So that's what we're going to look at in this scene. So I want to set this scene up very briefly. Let's get into our little slideshow here, and then I'll set up the scene within the context of the film for you here. So that's Lam Ching Ying in the middle, and that's Ricky Hui over on what is my left. With the guy with the brown vest and the green sleeves, who's from the Hui brothers, who are like this amazing legendary comedy family in Hong Kong, who kind of like revolutionized Cantonese language comedy films in the late 70s. From what I understand, again, I'm not like an expert on the history of Hong Kong cinema, that's kind of my understanding of it. But so Lam Ching Ying is playing this Taoist priest, right? And this guy here on the right is this rich guy, and he's the guy who wants him to move the grave. So it's his father's grave, and he wants him to move it for feng shui purposes. And they've agreed to meet at what is like a Western style, like European style, like restaurant tea house type of thing. It's not a Chinese tea house, right? In the lead up to this scene, the Ricky Hui character has been very nervous of being like, I don't know how to drink Western tea. I don't even know how to order it. Like, what are we going to do? And the Lam Ching Ying character is like, just calm down. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's just a tea. We're just going to meet these people. Don't worry about it, right? But you do have a little bit of setup of the fact that they feel like fish out of water, right? And they are very much, because they are Taoist, right? And Lam Ching Ying is like a Taoist priest of this like ancient Chinese tradition and religion and philosophy and stuff. They represent Chinese culture and like old world China and that lineage of history and beliefs and stuff like that, right? But they are in this coffee shop that is very modern and European style. So right away we can see how this is starting to appeal to audiences in Hong Kong in the 1980s, because their cultural lineage is a Chinese cultural lineage, but Hong Kong is a British colony, and so their people speak English and they carry on certain Western traditions, and they have like a Western style government and stuff like that. So you have this kind of inherent conflict that is part of the nature of living in Hong Kong. And what I think is so well done about this scene, which I'll talk about as we kind of walk through the scene a little bit, is that this is not the focus of this scene at all. Like, this scene is kind of exposition, right? They're setting up character, because we're going to meet the Moon Lee character in just a second. This is the first time we've seen her in the film. So we're setting up her character. We're setting up some character relationship dynamics. But the main business of this scene is for the rich guy to explain to the Lam Ching Ying character, I would like you to move my father's grave for these reasons. When can we do it? The Lam Ching Ying character's like, well, we can do it at this time. Like, it's a scene of exposition, right? they're covering up the exposition. So there's something called like bald exposition, where you just have like straight exposition and you don't try to cover it up at all. And that's when you're basically just dumping information on the audience that they need to know for the film to keep going forward, right? Now, a lot of screenwriters believe this is a very bad way to handle exposition, that you should cover it up somehow so it's organically integrated into a scene. So here we have a meeting where they're going to talk about stuff. So that's organic, right? But you have the comedy of cultural conflict that we're going to talk about here, and you have character conflict in this scene. So they're using this to cover up the exposition of the scene, to not make it seem just like this boring scene of information dump. But at the same time, they're doing this brilliant thing of taking this movie that has no real contextual relationship to its audience and making it relatable to them. So let's jump into our little slideshow here. So here they have the restaurant. So here's the Moon Lee character. Very interesting and important to note that she is wearing Western style clothing. She has just come back from the capital where she was studying cosmetics. So she's well educated, she speaks English, she knows Western customs, right? And look how different her dress is from the dress of these two guys over here. And you can even see how their style of dressing is very different from this other guy, because this other guy is wealthy and they're not. So now, this is an important part of the scene too. And again, remember, I'm not showing you every single part of the scene. Most of this scene is exposition. But the Ricky Hui character is kind of perving on the Moon Lee character. So the father's like, oh, she's grown up so much. And he's like, yeah, it's very grown up. And she sees that. So that drives a little point of conflict in the film. She sees the fact that he's perving on her. She does not like it. And she wants to make him look like a fool because he's embarrassing her in front of her father. So the waiter comes to take their orders, and she says, I want coffee. She knows what coffee is. She studied in the capital. She's wearing Western style clothes, right? So the Lam Ching Ying character goes, coffee? Like, he doesn't recognize the word. He doesn't even know what she's talking about, right? So now he's starting to seem very out of place in this very Western style establishment where he doesn't know what anything is. So you start to see this cultural conflict between traditional Chinese culture and Western culture. And then the Ricky Hui character is like, yeah, give me a cup of coffee. But as you can see in the parentheses with the subtitles, he's calling it cafe. So he doesn't actually know what it is. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's mispronouncing it. Right? She ordered it, so he's ordering it, right? The rich guy says, I want coffee too. Now we cut to the Lam Ching Ying character, and he opens a menu, and it's in English, right? So you're thinking about a Hong Kong audience in the 1980s undoubtedly goes to establishments relatively regularly that has English language menus because it is a British colony. So this is an experience that they can directly relate to. And you probably also have Hong Kongers who have parents who maybe don't speak English, who have come from China or who just never learned English for whatever reason, but they speak English, right? Much like you have the generational thing here of the Moon Lee character in Western style clothing who knows what coffee is, who probably can speak and read English, and these guys who don't at all. So he looks at the menu and he's like, I can't read this. So he just goes, I'll have coffee too, I guess. Okay. So then the coffee comes out. This is like later in the scene after they've discussed a lot of the stuff about moving the grave and whatever. And they bring out the milk or the cream or whatever it is, and the coffee separately. So the Ricky Hui character says, which one do I drink first, the black one or the white one? Like, they have no idea what's going on. They don't know what coffee is. They don't know you're supposed to put milk in it. There's sugar on the table, too. They don't know you're supposed to put sugar into it, right? So the Moon Lee character sees this, right? And she's like, oh, you perved on me. I'm going to make you look like an idiot. So she takes a sip of the coffee, then she takes a sip of the milk, and then she eats some of the sugar with the spoon, right? So, and they're looking at her like, oh, she knows what coffee is. She ordered it. She's wearing these Western style clothes. I guess that's how you drink coffee, because she's trying to make them look stupid, right? So there's so many layers of covering up what they're actually doing in this scene with comedy, right? They're covering up the exposition with comedy and conflict based around character and cultural clash, and they're covering up the fact that they're really discussing culture clash in modern Hong Kong in this scene through comedy. So then this guy comes back and they're not drinking their coffee, and he's like, well, you got to drink it while it's hot. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. So now what we see here is the Lam Ching Ying character takes a sip of, he's going to like take a sip of the coffee because he doesn't know that you're supposed to put the milk in it, right? So he brings it up to his mouth, and the rich guy is like, oh, you drink plain coffee? And Moon Lee is smiling in the background because she's putting the sugar and the milk into her dad's coffee while these other guys are drinking it plain to be like, ah, you idiots, I got you. And he's like, yeah, I like drinking plain coffee, because he doesn't yet know that he's doing it wrong, and he doesn't want to seem ignorant, not knowing what coffee is and how you're supposed to consume it. So he's like, oh, good. And then you see Moon Lee here. She's looking at the Ricky Hui character, right? She's like, yeah, I got you, you moron. Don't perv on me. And you can see she's putting the milk into the father's coffee here, right? But you can see she's like, you're an idiot and you're a country bumpkin, and I'm gonna make you look like one because I'm the young person and I know how you're supposed to do this, and I speak English and I know what coffee is. And then she gives him this look like, you're an idiot. And then he, look at the look on his face. He drinks the coffee and he's like, oh my God, this is disgusting. But he can't admit that, because then he's showing his ignorance as to the coffee and the Western customs and stuff like that, right? So it's just like, I'm not trying to draw like this really profound, high level theoretical conclusion about this scene. This scene is just a really, really good example to me of how you can take a period piece, make it relatable to a modern audience, and then cover up obvious things that you're doing, such as the exposition and the culture clash kind of thematic thing of, reaching out to your audience across the divide of period piece and modern audience. Cover that up with humor and character conflict, so that the audience is probably not consciously thinking that this is a scene of exposition, that this is a scene that is designed to make me relate to the film. They're just thinking, oh, this is funny, and there's some good character conflict going on here that's going to play out through the course of the film. So I thought that scene was extremely well done. I just watched this movie for the first time, which I'm embarrassed by, because I have a Hong Kong Cinema YouTube channel, and it's like an absolutely classic film, but I just never seen it before. And when I watched it, I was really, really impressed with that scene. So my name is Will. I hope you liked this video. Let me know what other kind of videos you want me to do, what other kind of movies you want me to talk about, and all that fun stuff down in the comments, and we'll see you next time.